Hello, happy Wednesday. Today is Wednesday, March 10th of 2021. Welcome to the National Parents Union Nightly Restorative Check-In. I am your host, Marisol Rucha. I am the very proud wife to Daniel. I'm the mother to Camerina, Emilia, and Sofia. Camerina will be 27 years old tomorrow. Tomorrow's her birthday. And Emilia is 26. She is the mother of my 3 grandbabies. And Sofia is our baby, who is 15 years old and a junior in school. I am the daughter to Irma Navran. I am the grandmother to Isabela Luna, who is 4, Cynthia Iliana, who is will be a year old next week, and Lorenzo Martin, who will be a month old next week. And I am also the very proud granddaughter to Camerina Rodriguez Castro, Alejandro Castro, Carmen Bedoya Quevedo, and Francisco Quevedo. Thank you for that. Always that moment to introduce myself and to just ground myself in where I come from and where I am and in the future of my family and loved ones. So thank you for that moment. As always, we're going to jump into our breathing technique. So we do what is called the 4-7-8 breathing technique. So we inhale for 4 seconds, we hold for 7, and then we release for 8. And I will count this down for us. And we do this, Dr. Anjali taught this to me, and we've been doing it on the show for almost a year now. And she hosts the show on Friday, so make sure that you check in. So before we go, I just want to say hello to my tia that says that she's watching. Hi, my Yoli. Okay, so let's go ahead and move into our breathing technique so that we are ready to focus and transition into the conversation tonight with our guest. So if you could please put your feet firmly on the ground. And if you'd like to close your eyes, just take a regular breath in and a breath out. And inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, release, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, release, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, release, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, release, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay. I highly recommend that you do that breathing technique at least once a day. I do it every night before I go to sleep. Sometimes it's hard. The exhale is hard for me for that prolonged period of time. So I just go back to my regular breathing until I can get back into that pattern. But please, I encourage you to do that at least once a day. And it's a great activity to do if you are transitioning into a different activity, which includes even sitting down to dinner with your family, or if you're getting ready to jump into a meeting with your staff, lead them through that technique so everybody feels grounded and ready. So with that, I'm very happy to bring on my guest tonight, Sergio C. Moreno Denton. Let me just move me over so you don't have the MPU sign on your forehead. Sergio, I just want to thank you really for being with me tonight. And I've been really excited about our conversation because we don't know each other, but I see you on Facebook. You are the brother to somebody that is very dear to me. And I just, I really just love and appreciate who you are, and the way that you show up on social media. And so I'm so glad to have this time with you. If you could please take this time to introduce yourself in any way that you like. So you can talk about yourself, your family, your loves, the things you don't love, your work, whatever it is that you are called to share with us.
Thank you so much. I've been looking forward to meeting you and to having this time together. As you said, we know each other sort of through my sister, and she has nothing but wonderful things to say about you. So I've really been looking forward to this. I love the way that you introduced yourself. And so I think I might try to do that too. As you said, my name is Sergio or Sergio. I am the proud parent of two wonderful children, Julia and Clara. They are ages 10 and 8. I am the proud partner of Emily. I am the child of my mother, Joyce, and my father, Sergio. I am the sibling of Christy and Daniel. And I just really want to begin by really honoring this time and this space. I love the breathing exercise you guided us through. And with every breath, I want to honor my guides, honor our guides, our mentors and teachers. With every breath, I honor our wisdom, texts, our scriptures, our traditions. I also honor our communities, our people, the places where we feel understood, seen, and loved. I want to honor our ancestors, our elders, those who have come before us, those who have stewarded these lands before we were even imagined. I honor the earth, the ground of our being, of our existence, the earth that holds us, the elements, and I honor the silence as well, this expansive space, the ground for potential, creativity. And finally, I honor myself, and I honor you and those who are joining us, honor our bodies, our minds, our spirit. Well, I am, during the day, a chaplain in a hospital here in Kansas City. I've been very blessed to do the work of spiritual caregiving in a hospital setting. I specialize in care of patients with long-term illness and at end of life. Sometimes this is known as palliative care, so I'm a palliative care chaplain. And so I provide spiritual and emotional support for patients and their loved ones. Let's see, what else can I tell you about myself? I serve as a meditation and Dharma facilitator at a local Buddhist temple that is my spiritual home here in Kansas City. And I live here in Kansas City with my partner, Emily, who I already mentioned, our 2 daughters, and our 2 dogs. There are a lot of things that are interesting to me and that I have curiosity about. In particular, of course, spiritual caregiving. I'm very interested in curanderismo, the healing arts, ancestral wisdom. Recently, I've been studying Nahuatl language, and so that has been very life-giving to me as I connect with ancestry. I'm really interested in cooking. This, as everybody in the pandemic, we're all finding ways to cope and to kind of make sense of things, and being locked up for a lot, locked down, not locked up. For a lot of us, food has been really something special. And what I've been connecting with a lot is the milpa food systems, you know, the ancestral Mesoamerican diet. You know, anything having to do with decolonizing spaces and decolonizing ways of being and existing in the world. So those are some of the things that I can tell you about myself. So yes, I'm happy to be here tonight and to have this time with you.
Sergio, I knew literally none of this. I think I knew that you worked at a hospital because you had mentioned something about it, but I really didn't know. And when I had mentioned to Christy, she, you know, we work together. So like, it's always very work focused, you know? And I am just right now, I'm so grateful to have this time with you. And I can just definitely, from the way that you came into this space, I can imagine the love and the support and the healing that families receive from you, and that those that are transitioning, because that kind of work, when you're, I think both birth work and death work, you're in between 2 roles. And the honor, I think the honor of being in that space is something that is profound. Can you just talk a little bit more about that and just share anything that you would like, if it's a story or just, I would just love to hear more about that work?
Yes. So chaplaincy for me is a midlife career change.
Mhm.
I've been doing hospital chaplaincy for about 4 years. I've gone through the intensive clinical pastoral education training here in Kansas City. But I was working in the corporate world before that. And what really kind of got me started in this direction was that at the company where I used to work, which was a creative company, I competed for and won an award that granted me a sabbatical period where I had free reign to explore any area of my own interest and do a creative exploration of that. And then the only requirement was that I would come back and share whatever I had done or spent my time doing with the community. And what I wanted to explore was narratives of faith. I was raised in a very religious home. My father is a Christian minister. My mother comes from a family of missionaries and ministers. And so I grew up in the Christian tradition. It is not the tradition that I claim or that I have claimed for most of my adult life, but it gave me a lot of curiosity about how people relate to the divine, how people find meaning and make meaning out of their relationship to the sacred. And so that's what I wanted to explore, the kind of changing landscape of faith and spirituality in our country today, which, as we know, is very pluralistic, very diverse, and very interesting and exciting now to see people really wrestling with and coming to terms with what they believe, how they relate to the sacred, how they make meaning, and how a lot of people are leaving ways they've been raised. So that kind of got me going in that direction. It was a really life-changing experience. And at the end of it, I felt that I needed to really ask some serious questions about what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. Eventually, through a process of discernment, I came to find that as a practicing Buddhist, it made a lot of sense to go into spiritual caregiving. I had some wonderful role models and mentors. And so that's kind of how I ended up here. So it's kind of important for me to share that this is still a recent development in my life. Palliative care is really an amazing branch of medicine. It's also known as supportive medicine. And it really is about providing support and comfort to patients who are dealing with really, really serious long-term illness, difficult illness, sometimes illness that doesn't have a cure, a lot of times. And then in a lot of cases, also end-of-life care. And like you said, there's something very, very particular and special about end of life and beginning of life, kind of those bookends. So for me, I get to spend a lot of really sacred time in the presence of families and their loved ones as they are preparing to transition, to leave this life. And it is very powerful. It is very humbling. And I feel very honored that I get to be a part of their process as they deal with very serious existential questions, as they deal with decisions that are tough to make for families. So I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to do that. It's hard work, but it's very rewarding and very fulfilling as well. So I feel very fortunate.
I saw you had some sacred smoke going. What
yeah.
What you burning over there?
I like it. I have a dear friend on Instagram who is doing an Instagram live. She does a lot of wonderful, she's actually a birth worker, and she does a lot of spiritual healing work. And she said that she likes to do a smoke offering because the internet sometimes fails. And so she kept her Instagram live going because of the smoke offering. So I like to offer, for the space, kind of cleanse the space a little bit. And so I like to use Palo Santo as a way to kind of clear a little bit of energy and make an offering to our ancestors and our spaces and to you and anybody listening. So, yeah.
So I want to really quick just go through some comments. Judith says, que eres el gemelo de tu hermana. But your sister is saying that es lo mejor. I would have to say equal footing, my love.
That's really funny.
Sister is amazing. She is phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So it's really funny. There's three of us, and everybody says we look exactly alike. And my mom likes to make a joke that she didn't have children; she had clones. Um, so I love it. I think that my sister and my brother are the best looking people in the world. So I don't mind being compared to them. I do like to say that I got the looks and they got the smarts.
Well, you all definitely have the heart. And I
Oh,
think that that is something when we talk about like the ancestral, right? Like that thing that you carry in your blood, in your heart. And I just really want to say hello to Dr. Anjali, who actually, so she hosts the show on Fridays. I don't know if you've met her, if you know her, but she works she's a birth worker, and she also is a death doula. And so I think you need to go and talk with her on her version
yes.
of our show also. And
Yes.
my elder, my spiritual mother, Tony Terrazas, is with us, and she says aho to you.
Oh, blessings. Wonderful. Thank you.
And we have one more, Miss Emily is saying, mm-hmm.
That's my Emily.
That's your why hello, Miss Emily. Thank you for sharing your partner, your husband with us today. And
Yes.
thank you, children, for me also. So I really want to know, because so I am blessed to have so many spiritual, I don't know, like guides, partners on this journey in life, and that follow different practices. And I had a conversation recently with somebody who is Christian and who has really walked into her discernment, into her don, into her gift. And I asked her, I've known her for almost 10 years now. And so there has definitely been a shift. And so what I'm wondering with you, like, could you just share a little bit more about how it, like, the realization of the gifts that you have, of the don that you have, of the responsibility, I think also, and the honor that you have, to claim and to be in this space as a healer.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, my upbringing was in a Christian home. And so although I don't claim Christianity as my tradition, I have a very deep love and warm space in my heart for the Christian tradition because of my family primarily, maybe exclusively because of my family. And it started at a very young age. I grew up with my parents being caregivers, really spiritual caregivers. My dad's work is completely driven by his calling to the ministry. And his work has always been to go to the places that people don't want to go, to the places that scare other people, and to reach out to those in need. My mom is a wonderful human being who gives so freely, whether it's the hospitality of her home or the kindness of her ear and her heart. There's so many people who would consider or call my mom a mentor and an elder for them. So it was really modeled for me in childhood, and as well as for my siblings, by my parents, by their distinct gifts and ways that they provide care and love and compassion to others. So that's where it starts. There was something early on in my embedded theology and my tradition of upbringing that was about how to identify your calling, and it was where you see a need and where you feel a passion, and where your passion and that need that you've identified intersect. Perhaps that is your calling. So discernment looks very different across traditions, but I think ultimately it comes down to what is the fire in your belly? What is the thing that you cannot help but do? And sometimes there have been times when, I have a horrible overnight shift where I have no sleep and no rest, and I'm going from one call to another and being present and witnessing very terrible things where people are just in absolute despair, and it can be so soul crushing. And I can go home and feel like that was time well spent, and that it was worth being there, and that perhaps if I made a little bit of difference, that's all that matters. So it's really about what makes you feel alive. And for me, this work is very life-giving. It makes me feel connected to others. It makes me feel grounded. And I think that's what's been most important for me in my discernment, finding the place where the need that I see and where my passion or the fire in my belly meet, and just going for that. But it's very different for everybody, I think. Yeah.
Well, you had the opportunity through that sabbatical at work to really delve into this. So what was it that you did? What were those practices that you engaged in, or who did you like turn to? Who did you pull on the journey with you to get to where you are?
It was such a marvelous opportunity because I got to travel across the country. Over the course of 6 months, I went to New York City, I went to San Francisco, New Orleans, Chicago, and then I did a lot of work here in Kansas City where I live. And so it was mostly two things. What I was really interested in was holding and catching stories of people. And I wanted to know from all kinds of people, from all walks of life, from every spiritual tradition and from no spiritual tradition, what it was that how they made meaning and how they experienced the sacred, how they believe in God, how they experience God, or how they relate to God. And so it looked a lot like reaching out to people and saying, hey, would you mind sitting with me for a cup of coffee and having a conversation? So much like what you're doing tonight, right? And so I would find people would find me. They would often say, oh, you need to talk to so-and-so. So a lot of it was interviewing people and then writing these as stories, capturing those narratives, and then compiling them in a blog that I had back when everybody did blogs. This was a few years ago. So that was the first part. The second part was visiting places of worship or sacred spaces, and participating in as much as was okay for me to participate as an outsider, and just kind of having the experience of the sacred space, the sacred time, the worship, whatever it is, whatever form that took place. So of course I visited a lot of churches, a lot of synagogues, a lot of mosques, a lot of temples, other sacred spaces, and then I met with people across the entire faith spectrum, and also people of no faith. So those were the two ways that it took place. And then when I came back to present, I had a presentation where I kind of shared some of those really meaningful stories and connected some of the dots of how it is that we make meaning through narrative. I have a narrative philosophy of life. It is through storytelling that we connect to each other, that we make meaning, that we form community, and how people experience that. And then I had an experiential part of that where we had these circles, where we invited two representatives from two different traditions. And it was a small circle where we had fostered a conversation to ask questions, to get to know each other, to understand a little bit better about their tradition. And then I had an exhibit with sacred objects that were on loan from a lot of people. It was really probably one of the best times of my life. It was a really meaning-making time for me. So that's how that kind of took place.
Have you ever read the Book of Joy?
Is that His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu? I need to read that. I know I need to read that, but like a lot of people, to read a stack of books is very tall. Yeah. I've read a few excerpts, and of course, I'm very fond of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I don't know as much about Desmond Tutu, but I am curious about that book. You've read it?
It's one of my favorite books.
Oh.
It's one of my favorite books. And it is actually usually when I do presentations or I have a stack of books next to me, because people always want to know about resources. And regardless of what I'm talking about, I pull that one out. Because it's just so much about like humanity. And it's really, it's the Book of Joy, like living in the moment. And what I love and what I'm starting to really appreciate is how God shows up to us in the form that we need, like the form that is specific to us and that speaks to our heart and speaks to our soul. So I do absolutely recommend it. When did you, so you have started, you made the decision to be a Buddhist, but you also have this connection with what I'm hearing, like the indigenous ceremonial way of being. And so I have also really like that's the practice that I identify the most with, and it's a practice that I'm learning. But for me, it's very connected to the land. It's very connected to the land in Mexico.
Mhm.
And it's almost like my body remembers like the blood that courses through my body is connected with the dirt, with the tierra. But can you talk about like your work and your experience and like you're delving into in the indigenous way of being an indigenous ceremony as well?
Yes. And I want to say that this is all, you're seeing this in me in a very raw state, because this is a relatively recent development. In fact, I think it's kind of surprised my family. They don't know where this is coming from or what's going on.
It's those ancestors. They are calling you.
Yes,
They are
exactly.
beating the drum
Exactly.
to get you. Yes.
Yeah. So um, I grew up in Mexico. We all grew up in Mexico, my family, my siblings and I. And it wasn't until when I was 19 that I came to the States for college. I never intended to stay, but life happened and I stayed. But I grew up, so I'm mixed, right? So I come from a mixed background. My father is Mexican and my mother is North American, white. And that mix makes me causes me to relate in many ways to the Chicano experience, the Mexican American experience, but in many ways I can't quite claim that because I didn't grow up here, and so like all of us who have this experience of having two cultures kind of come together, two languages, for some people two different religious traditions. All of these dualities, all of these binaries, we kind of exist in this space, this in-between space, that Gloria Saldúa calls Nepantla, where you're always feeling like you're ni de aquí ni de allá, right? You're either too Mexican to be American or too American to be Mexican. And we all have that experience to a certain degree, those of us who have this identity, this mixed identity, or this dual or bicultural identity. What ended up happening for me is that I grew in a very disconnected way from my Mexican indigenous ancestry. All I know is that my bisabuelita, Virginia, was a Zapotec Indian, and from the region of Oaxaca, and then she lived in the state of Veracruz for most of her life. And it's just, and it was, so lately, especially, I think it's been really a result of the pandemic, this yearning or this need to reconnect with something. I felt in this in-between space where things did not make a lot of sense. I felt very kind of dismembered. The image of Coyolxauhqui, the goddess of the moon, in the Aztec pantheon or the Mexica pantheon. So she's dismembered, but she is contained in
Yes.
a
Yes.
So there's this sense of feeling like all of the different parts of my life were so compartmentalized. And so there was a space where I was a certain way. There was another space where I was a certain way. There were parts of myself that I kept hidden from other people, parts of myself that I only reserved for certain times. This really disjointed space. And one of my heart teachers, Lama Rod Owens, has been so instrumental in my healing process. And what he instructed me to do was to reconnect with the mother. And what that is precisely what you said, is reconnecting to that which grounds me, which is earth, the elements, to living in a more embodied way. A lot of us grow up in very dissociative ways, where we separate body and mind. We feel like they're different things, like especially in a lot of Christian perspectives. The body is just a vessel, right? It's just a sacred thing. The body is the thing that causes us to sin. And so we try to repress the body, and it's all about elevating the spirit. But Lama Rod was showing me how disembodied I was living, and how dissociative my practice was. And how the practice of meditation, which I thought I had figured all out, I was doing it wrong, right? I was focusing on the mind because the mind is all that matters. And he said, focus on your body. And that was very transformational. And when he said focus on your body, I thought, what? That seems really basic and elemental. I mean, I've done yoga. I know what you're talking about. And then the more I started to focus on the body, the more I realized that my body naturally did the thing that I was trying to get my mind to do, which is to be present in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
The body can only be in this moment and in this space. It cannot be in the future and it cannot be in the past. It's only ever here. The mind, however, spends a lot of time worrying about the future and regretting the past. And so we try to rein it in and try to help stabilize and be present. But my body does that naturally and inevitably. And so reconnecting with my body, reconnecting with mother, inevitably pointed me in the direction of ancestral wisdom, of the traditions and the spirituality of pre-colonized Mexican peoples and Mesoamerican peoples. So yeah, that's a bit of a long answer, but I feel like it kind of needed to be because that's where all of this is coming from. And of course, so that has pointed me to want to feel this yearning to learn Nahuatl, the language of most of Mexico before colonization. It has caused me to seek out and find a curandera maestra, who is my maestra and who has been so instrumental in my spiritual development over the last 8 months. So it's all very fresh, and so I don't have a very sophisticated way to talk about it just yet. I'm just kind of living into it and letting it lead me where it needs to.
Yeah, you know, I where we are is like we know this, right? Like where we are in our practice and our beliefs and our, like, it's exactly where we need to be. And there's never any point, I think, where we could ever expect ourselves to be experts in anything, or to have, you know, I this journey and the learning and our processing, like all of it goes on. I believe it goes on, and I become stronger in this belief into the next life, and we can continue to do our work on the spiritual plane. There's something that I've been thinking about, and I'm gonna ask you about it. So are you familiar with Father Greg Boyle from Homeboy Industries?
I'm not.
You're welcome.
I need to be.
Yeah, I'll tell you, you're welcome right now.
Okay.
He is he's just a phenomenal Catholic priest who started Homeboy Industries. So he started this program. He's extremely well known, but his talk and his heart and his conversation is really, he talks about with the most marginalized. So with people, he works a lot with gang members, with people who are being released from prison, with what people would consider, you know, I think what some people may think of as like the worst of our society. And the way he accepts and develops what he considers like radical kinship. And I have been very honored to both meet him and just be able to hear him speak. And last week I heard him speak. I'm a part of a mentor project, and they had a summit. And so he was the speaker, but he talked about forgiveness. And he said, you know, forgiveness, I can't remember it exactly. I'll see if I can find my notes. But basically he said, you know, like forgiveness is not, what we need is mercy. And that, so what did you react to there? Because you got something, you felt that. Can you explain that?
Yeah, forgiveness is very interesting because a lot of times I've been thinking a lot about, you know, we are living through times where a lot of people are having to apologize for a lot of things. Or being held accountable or called out or called in or whatever it may be. And I think that we don't know how to apologize and how to claim responsibility for our own harm. Yes. Right. And on the other side of that is granting forgiveness. Sometimes I think we grant forgiveness to the people who haven't even asked for forgiveness, or we assume that we need to forgive them for something. So forgiveness feels like it's much more complex than simply saying, I forgive you. And so I really like the emphasis on mercy. For me, mercy is not a term that I use very much in my spiritual practice. but it points me in the direction of loving kindness. And loving kindness is one of the boundless attitudes that you seek to cultivate as a Buddhist, as a Mahayana Buddhist, at least. And so when we are talking about loving kindness, we are talking about that almost inborn desire for other beings to be happy and free from suffering. So mercy makes me think that maybe that's kind of where that is heading, this idea of this innate loving kindness, this spirit, this altruistic, compassionate spirit that is accepting and that holds space and love and eventually forgiveness as well. So I think what I was reacting to was this idea of saying forgiveness, yes, but really what we need is mercy. I would say loving kindness might be what I would correlate to that. Does that?
What I'm appreciating what you described about with forgiveness is that it's an energetic exchange almost.
Yes.
Because, and I think also you were almost like hitting like there's like an expectation around it. And I really found it interesting that you said that sometimes like we feel like we need to forgive people who don't even say that I'm sorry. And my experience with that has really been around like, because I'm holding on to pain and I'm holding on to harm that was done to me, like processing forgiveness for that person on my own without them.
Yeah.
Like has released me.
Yeah. There's a lot of assumptions that go unchecked about forgiveness and apology. So something that's been very revolutionary for me recently is the idea that an apology doesn't have to be accepted. You don't have to accept an apology just because it's given. I had recently an experience where I was offended and attacked quite significantly. And when I confronted the people involved in this and called them in on it, they immediately moved into apology. I'm so sorry, and sort of kind of not really wanting to sit in the muck and the mire of that hurt. Very quickly moving to apology. And I listened to them, and then I said, well, I appreciate that you're apologizing. I'm not going to accept your apology. And that sounds very harsh. It feels very unkind. But I think it's actually rooted in compassion. It's saying, the way we're going to keep this from happening again is to actually going through it and not going around it. And sometimes an apology is a way to go around the muck.
Well, and it sounds unkind on the surface.
Yes.
Because even the I'm sorry could be surface.
Yes.
Like that's the thing. Like where are we working and where are we connecting? Are we connecting at this level? Like you said, like some of the most difficult things are having those conversations with people sitting in discomfort, sitting and like you said, like the muck, like, oh, and doing that. So doing it on your own is one thing that can be hard to accept, that you want to go into that space on your own, but doing it with another person or with other people. And I think like it's almost unkind to you to accept a forgiveness that's a surface thing and that doesn't, because I mean, really what you're talking about is like not being able or willing to sit in that space.
Yeah. And this makes me think it's kind of connecting back to what you shared about forgiveness and mercy. Sometimes mercy looks like not accepting an apology. Sometimes that's what mercy looks like, right? It feels counterintuitive. My teacher often says, sometimes the most compassionate thing to say is no. And it doesn't feel very open. It feels very, constraining or constricting. But yes, like you said, it is oftentimes the most compassionate thing to do.
So Sergio, like you, like that no, that immediate thing, like you said, it can feel like harsh. It can feel. What is that space between the harshness and compassion? How did you move from that space? What does that space feel like to you? Like, how do you get yourself in that space?
So a theme or an issue I've been working a lot with on myself lately is boundaries. and knowing boundaries, setting boundaries, respecting boundaries. And one of my mentors, when I was working through this with her, she said, you know, when you talk about boundaries, it sounds a lot like you're talking about what keeps us apart. But the way I think about boundaries is actually that boundaries are the places where we meet, not where we draw apart. That's what that space is for me. That change in image really shifted this for me. So our boundaries are not what the spaces where we separate or where we disconnect. They're the places where we meet and where we say, this is the boundary, this is how far I go, and this is how far you go, and this is where we meet. That's what I think that's what I want to say about that. That's what that space is. The space where we meet, the space where we connect, the space where we have this interaction and this mutuality, where we understand how interconnected we are and how your actions have a direct effect on mine and vice versa.
And there's the word that I'm thinking of, there's almost this invitation. There's an invitation to meet at that space.
Yes, I like that. I like that idea.
When you brought up loving kindness, and I've said this many times, but my comadre, my best friend, her dad, we were doing our vision board, and her dad, who's a practicing Muslim, said that his goal in life is always only to practice loving kindness and nonviolence towards himself and others.
I like that. Well, I wish everybody had that as their only goal. It would be a very different world. But yeah, I think at the heart of a lot of our traditions, really our desire, I think all anybody ever wants is to be happy and to be free from suffering. At the very core, that's what we want. And loving kindness is to want that for others. For me, that's what it means. So yeah, I think loving kindness. And these days, I'm also changing. Instead of saying loving kindness, I feel it's a time when we really need to be saying loving justice as well. So I'm trying to shift the focus a little bit more and saying loving kindness also means loving justice. I like to put it together as one word, as an action of seeking justice and reconciliation.
Well, let's talk about that. Like, what does that look like to you in your space, in your city, that loving justice? Some things immediately came to mind for me, but I'm just wondering for you, what does that look like?
I am still working this out. I am in the process of learning a lot. I feel very drawn to decolonizing work. For me, what that means is that we have to shift the power balance. Or the balance of power. I think that the colonial mindset, the colonial perspective, that perspective of empire is one of power over. It's one that says we have the power, you don't. We dictate, you follow. We oppress, you are oppressed. That is an imbalance of power. I think a decolonial way of power is one that is power with. A power where there is mutuality. And for me, my definition of power, which is not my own, but the one that I subscribe to, is that power is the ability to affect change. And I think that when we are affecting change together in a mutual exchange, in a mutual way that benefits us all, or as many of us as possible, that is where we begin to move into that loving justice space. So we have to understand what our privilege is, which we all have a certain degree of privilege, how we use our privilege, and how to stop doing that, how to stop doing the things that are perpetuating an imbalance of power. How are we benefiting from the oppression, from the injustices that have been ongoing for the last 500 years? And how can we gradually, it's not going to happen overnight, but there's little things that we can all be doing every day, every moment, decisions we can make to kind of begin to move into a direction more of loving justice. So it's about really assessing our own power, what kind of power we have, what kind of privilege we have, and how we can affect change together for mutual benefit. And I think for a while it's going to feel imbalanced, because I think when the pendulum is so far out one way, you have to really push it hard in the other direction. I think that's kind of where I'm headed in that. For the time being, that's my answer.
I really, really want to encourage you and invite you to check out Father Great Boyle. So he has two books, Tattoos on the Heart and Barking to the Choir. But also, if you just Google or look on YouTube, you'll see there's a short video that he did that was maybe 2 minutes long. And just in that, like just the wisdom, I think there's just a lot of connection there between what the way that he has experienced the world and the work that he's doing. Okay, so I have a question for you.
Yeah.
And this I have to attribute to my brother, my spiritual brother, Pedro Terrazas. He taught me, and he talks about, he is also somebody that is definitely a spiritual guide and a healer to many people. But he says, that he feels that he has no business going out into the world and supporting prayer, supporting ceremony, unless things are good at home, unless his relationship with his wife is good, his kids are healthy, that he has no business going out into the world. And I really love that because it helps keep me focused, right, and centered. But my question to you is, how does this way of being and who you are and this way that you're shifting and growing, what has that impact been on Emily and your kids and you as a family unit? So between your two daughters and your wife and you, that growth together.
Well, for a most honest answer, you would have to ask them.
Yeah.
But I want to say that that this has been a very positive shift for me, and that I'm continuing to live into my own potential and my own worth. But what this process of spiritual inquiry and practice and development and reconnecting with ancient wisdom, ancestral wisdom, what it has done is for me is that it has grounded me, and ultimately what it has done is that it has helped me to love myself, to truly love myself. Like a lot of us, I have dealt with a lot of negative self-talk, a very terrible self-image and sense of self-worth, the infamous imposter syndrome, all of these things that are really, in many ways, the product of living in a colonized environment.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you do the process of healing and restoring and reconnecting with your own self, with your heart medicine, with your ancestral ways, and really grounding with earth, like you said earlier, you begin to love yourself more truly and more fully. And that, to me, that looks like acceptance. It looks like letting go. It looks like spaciousness. So that when feelings and emotions arise that perhaps might be afflictive, like anger or jealousy or fear, I can hold those feelings instead of repressing them and create space for them and make a home for them. And then when I make them my friends, when I befriend that adversity, that hardship, it is no longer harmful, that I can transform it. That's a long about way to say that because I love myself better today and more truly today, I am able to love others more authentically. And so I've become a more mellow person, I think I would say. I'm more relaxed. I'm less concerned with being perfect. And I can honestly say that I love who I am and who I'm becoming. In not in spite, but perhaps even because of my own imperfections. So I think that causes me to be a better parent, a better partner, a more present and engaged family member. Yeah, there's that image, you can't pour water out of an empty glass. If you live a life where you have a lot of self-hatred and a lot of negative self-talk, that's what's going to come out. And sometimes we care for others as a way to avoid dealing with our own muck and our own mire. So it's, putting the mask on yourself before you put it on your children when you're on an airplane, that kind of thing.
Iyanla Van Zant said that I wrote it down yesterday, but she talked about like the way that you treat yourself is the way that you treat God.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah, I think when you grow up, especially in Christian circles, there's this idea of the imago Dei, right? The image of God. And whatever image of God people have is really what kind of dictates or determines what their theology or belief or conviction might be. If your image of God is that, God is judgmental and wrathful and he's going to spite you for everything or smite you for everything, then that's if your image of God is more of a nurturing, creative power, then you're going to have a very different outlook on life, right? So I like that. I like that idea of how you treat yourself is how you treat God, or how you relate to God.
She said, you are the representation of how you treat God in your life. Miss Iyanla Van Zant, you are the representation of how you treat God in your life.
I like that a lot.
So with everything that you're saying, you're treating God in your life with loving kindness, with loving justice, with patience. You're holding a lot of space for God in your life.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, it's a work in progress. It's a don't like to use the journey metaphor too much, but it is a journey that we're walking. But yeah, thank you. I like that.
I'm so glad that we are walking in this space together. I'm very grateful for that. One of the things that I shared with you that I've been trying to do is at the end of our show. So hold on, let me catch up. So Miss Emily said, hi, thank you, Marisol. So I think that was thank you again for sharing him with us. My mom is here. Hi, Mom. And Sarah Darby says hello.
Oh, that's my dear friend, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah. I'm so glad that you're with us. So you caught us at a good time, and I'm going to challenge you to add some things. So what we're going to do is I want us to share things that we are proud of, because I really want us to really take this time to celebrate ourselves and celebrate each other. And these are things that, that I want us to own. And I don't want you to say something like, oh, I'm so proud of the child that I raised who, but no. Like you can talk about maybe the relationship and what you've poured in, but very specific what you have done and impacted. So if those of you that are watching, if you could please start to think and put in the chat those things that you are proud of for yourself. And Sergio, I'm going to challenge you to five things.
Gosh, this is hard.
I know.
Yeah, I want to begin by saying that if you had asked me this maybe a year ago, I maybe would have come up with one. But I'm going to give it my best shot. I really like that question, and it's really hard.
Do you want me to go first?
Yes, please. That would be great.
Well, I say this all the time. I always know I'm going to ask this question. I don't prepare. Okay. So what I'm going to say is related to the show and what it is that we've talked about. I've been having a hard time just emotionally. And I'm just so proud of the fact that I am so connected to Creator, to the divine, and that I'm so open to hearing the messages. And the message that I received from you today about holding space for my emotions is exactly what I needed. So I'm really grateful that I'm so open to, and I continue to push to be better and to grow. So I'm really proud of that. I'm very proud of the fact that sometimes with work stuff, so I'll be specific. I don't like details of things. So, but I don't trying to figure out my website, trying to figure out hiring an employee that, or that kind of operational stuff. That's not me, but I do it anyway. And I'm working through it anyway. And it is uncomfortable because I just really wish someone would do it for me. But I'm proud of myself that I still continue to push. So something else that I'm proud of, I'm proud that I'm going to therapy. I am proud of the trusting relationship that I have with my therapist, and the openness that I have, that allows me to realize and own things about myself. And that'll take me to 4, because I'm trying to work on the balance of owning my authentic self in the good and the bad. And I'm working on the balance of judgment. So I'm working on really looking at myself. My tendency is I look a little bit and then I push it away, but no, really look at it and withhold the judgment and just accept and be with it. And number 5, I'm proud of continuing to have the space I'm proud that this space was created and that, I worked on creating this space, and I'm proud that Dr. Anjali has this space on Fridays. Okay, so I'm going to really quick before you go, I see one person. So Christy says, I'm proud of continuing to create a support system for myself because yes, you need people to turn to every day. And you know what, Christy? Like that system, that beautiful system that's giving to you, it's so beautiful because of what you're giving to it. Like that's the beautiful thing is that you have given it, like you've created that beautiful system because you are beautiful in that system. Okay, Sergio, you're up.
Okay. First of all, I love everything that you shared, and I love that you have this space. This is so meaningful and lovely. Okay. Like Christy, I think the first thing I'm going to say is that I am proud that I am looking for my community constantly, that I'm looking for ways to connect with people who help me, who make me feel seen, who make me feel understood and loved. I work and play and live in very homogenous spaces. And a lot of times I don't see myself represented. I don't feel represented. And so I've been actively reaching out and seeking people and communities and spaces where I feel at home. So I'm very proud that I'm doing that. I'm very proud that I am, as I'm getting a little bit older and a little bit grayer, I'm really proud that I'm letting go of perfection. I'm proud that I can walk through the house and see that my kids have left their shoes strewn about and the books all over the place, and that my first thought is not, hey, you got to pick this up, but rather, oh, where are they? I want to go see them. I'm really proud that I'm letting go of perfection in many ways in my life. So that's two. Third is that I'm very proud that I've been very intentional about myself, about what happens to me. I've had a track record of kind of just going wherever the wind blows and letting things happen to me or happen for me. And in many ways, that's been good. I've been very fortunate, but in other ways, it hasn't been so much. And now I'm taking steps to make things happen for myself. When I find something that I want to pursue, this is very recent. I'm going after it and I'm making a way for myself and being an advocate for myself. I'm proud that I am living into my authentic self and that I'm expressing in a way that is more cohesive, not as fragmented, but more whole. And so I'm proud that I am being able to be myself more fully in all the spaces that I move in with all the people that I meet. That's four. I'm proud that I'm not taking myself so seriously anymore, that I can laugh at myself, that I can say, done is better than perfect. And I'm a work in progress, and maybe someday I'll get it, but maybe I won't, and that's okay. So those are my 5 for today.
And yes. So I challenge you to think of your 5 tomorrow. So I want to share what Sarah had said. Sarah says, I'm proud of being strong during the hardest time of my life, to be present for a loved one's last days, despite wanting to break. I didn't do it alone, though, and I'm proud of realizing I couldn't do it alone. I am proud to admit I need others.
That is so significant and so important. I think realizing that we need other people and coming to a place in our lives when we realize that there are times when we have to ask for help is one of the hardest things to do. And we have to do it. There's no choice. And so to take that step is so brave and courageous.
And I think also because that thing that would keep us from asking for help, that pride, right, it's so not what you've been talking about. It's so not loving and kind to yourself.
Yes.
To hold on to your pride and to hold on to even like that false sense of humility.
Yes.
That you're too humble to ask for help, you know. And then we have one more. I am proud of being good with who I am.
Yes, very well put, succinct, to the point.
And that, but that, you know, this is my my mom, one of my moms right here. And I know that how beautiful to be at the point in your life. Like both of us are grandmothers. Both of us. So she's the mother of my spiritual brother, Pedro, who's my age. How like that's the beauty of the time on this earth, is that we just begin to see things so simply and so clear, you know?
Yes.
Sergio, there's one last thing that I want to leave you with before I go, and that is that I really hope that you will consider writing a book.
Oh.
And writing about your understandings and your journey. And I know that, like hearing that you're a writer already with the blog that you had written about your experiences, but I just feel like there's so much that you have to give. You talked about your teachers, and I feel like I'm sitting here as a student, and I think that there's so much that others can learn from you and with you. And so I'm just hopeful that you will take that in and do it.
Well, that's a very high compliment, and I really thank you for saying that. That means a lot. And I feel that that we all learn from each other. So I'm also a student of this relationship with you, and I'm very grateful for you, for your open heart and your candor and your honesty and your love, your loving kindness. So
thank you, Sergio. Thank you. Okay, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Please make sure to join Anjali on Friday. I know she's going to have another amazing guest. You know, she is a phenomenal human being, just a beautiful soul. So please make sure that you catch her. Lots of learning happening there, and lots of sharing of love and goodness. So thank you again for joining us. Please know that you are loved and cared for always. Good night.